All right, and joining me on the broadcast is Vice Admiral Shekhar Sinha. He's a retired former Chief of Integrated Defence Staff. Sir, first of all, thank you so much for your time. Now, considering that 12% of global trade passes through the Red Sea, including 30% of global container traffic, how significant is the potential disruption to the world economy?
Well, good evening, and thank you very much, Siddharthji, for taking me on your show. I think this is a new kind of threat. Red Sea is a very busy area, as you know, and I would say that this will call for concerted effort by major seafaring countries who are transiting through Red Sea, which links the Mediterranean to the Arabian Sea.
Okay.
And they will have to be escorted in some kind of escort formation, like we did escort as far as the anti-piracy operation is concerned. But these will have to be escorted along with the warships, who will immediately start taking on anti-missile measures or anti-drone measures, being in the vicinity of not one ship, but maybe a number of these merchant ships. Of course, the first thing will be to take a slightly longer route to come to this area and avoid this route altogether. But that is going to cause a lot of stress because it will have to be a longer route. It will take many more extra days to reach its destination, and also the the expenses in running of these vessels are going to be much more. So I think the countries have to very quickly see as to how to protect. If we cannot stop navigating from Red Sea.
Definitely. Sir, I'll come to this later. I was just asking that how will this impact the world economy?
Well, it will impact quite a lot because, there are certain number of ships with certain amount of cargo, including the oil, is being transited through this area. And if you reduce the numbers, somewhere down the line, it will not reach the refineries where this oil is converted into a usable oil for the country's economic progress. So it has got a direct impact on the economy of every country whose business or whose oil or whose trade is passing through Red Sea. And it is everybody in the world. 70% of the world is water, Siddharthji. And I think that we should realize that the trade will come to not a halt, but it will severely get impacted, and it will impact the world economy, which is already suffering a little bit of recession post-COVID.
Okay. Now, so some big shipping companies have decided not to use the Red Sea. I mean, they are instead taking the longer route. So how might this impact fuel and operating costs for shipping companies, and how could these costs trickle down to consumers?
Well, that is the first immediate impact, because if you take another 4 or 5 days of sailing time by going around the African coast, then you're looking at more consumption of the fuel by the ships themselves. They'll have to hire people for longer, and they will reach the destination that much later. So obviously these losses will ultimately have to be made up by charging the consumer in every product more than what he pays now. And therefore, they say the growth is by demand is increasing. The demand is likely to fall because it becomes very expensive. Then people will not like to buy those items, and it will affect the economy directly in all the countries. So I think it's a very serious matter, and I think that there has to be some discussion done with the Iranians who are supporting the Houthis, to see that it does not impact the common trade. But it looks very unlikely. It looks very unlikely, and I think the world has to be ready for this alternate economic impact.
So, are you trying to say, sir, that ultimately the consumers will be suffering, as a repercussion of this?
No, you're absolutely right. Because tell me, this extra cost, where will it come from? Ultimately, you and I will be paying it in form of higher prices, or maybe those countries will put a cess. Just like any other pandemic. You had a cess to collect extra money for that, and I would be surprised if they will have to put a cess on that. And again, it puts from your pocket in my pocket.
Also, sir, now. How are oil and gas price jumps following the news of the attacks likely to impact various sectors of the global economy, and what regions are particularly vulnerable, if you could just tell us?
Well, the reasons of the Are you asking for the reasons as to why the price goes up?
Correct, sir.
Well, see, because what is the source of development is energy. You require more energy, and right now it is only the fossil fuel and very little any other form of energy which is supporting the world. So I would say that till such time our dependence on fossil fuel remains, these problems will continue to haunt the humanity all over the world. And therefore, shifting to alternate, so it might just push the inventions which are required for alternate source of energy. For example, for vehicles, or hydrogen, you got electronic vehicles, maybe many more, nuclear energy, wind energy. The alternate sources of energy will become very, very more important to be used into daily lives.
Okay. Now, sir, coming on to what you were saying in the beginning, now what measures or strategies could be employed at the international level to counter the potential economic fallout from the disruptions in the Red Sea?
Yeah, I think the first, as a former Navy man, I can tell you that the first action should be to make sure that these ships are escorted by the naval ships or warships, which have the ability to take the countermeasure against the missile attack or also in the drone attack. So that anytime they see a missile on their radar, they take it on with surface-to-air missiles, but that has got the the danger of escalating into a slightly larger warfare, and one has to be prepared for it. And therefore, negotiating with the Houthis or the Iranians who seem to be supporting them to make sure that the trade routes are not hampered by, this is a totally new form of warfare. This is almost what is called the economic warfare. Economic warfare is, its source of a lot of disturbances in the world.
Okay, you've just mentioned, sir, negotiating with Houthis is one of the solutions. So how will we do that? What is the way to do that? If you could just tell us a bit about that.
Well, I guess, the international organizations, there are organizations in the United Nations, there are organizations in Norwegian, Scandinavian countries who are constantly doing these negotiations as far as the human development and world economy, who don't form part of any other group, but they will talk about human rights. They will talk about as to, okay, you are doing this to harm particular country, but this is going to harm everybody else, entire population. And therefore the negotiations will have to be done by these teams. And I think the UN has a very important role to play here, Azataji.
Okay. All right, with this, thank you so much, sir, for joining in.